everyone, I'm Heather and today's video project is a light chat, wrap up, if you will, of the summer library reading challenge thing that I did. I finished it now. I've blacked it out. I blacked the sucker out, right? All done. It was for Seattle Library Book Bingo Adult Summer Reading Challenge, and I did do a video before I did it, sort of saying what all the prompts were and the books that I was going to read for them. But having finished it all, moved some things around, given everything a rating and how I feel about it, I never really did a chat afterward to say like how they went, you know, the best and the worst and blah blah blah. So there are 24 books on here. I'm not going to talk about them all because nobody got time for that. But like I'll sort of leave it by here, or maybe like put it on the screen somewhere. Have a look at it. If there's any on there where you were thinking, like when you watched the video before, if you're thinking, ooh, I'm excited to hear about how that one goes because I'm thinking of that one in my mind, should I get that one, blah, blah, then just drop me a message, you know, a little comment or whatever, and I will let you know how I got on with it and sort of like a review of it if you want. But as it stands now for this video, I think I'm just going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly, or just sort of like maybe like the three best, like my three favorites from the project, and also maybe the three most disappointing ones. I won't say the worst, okay? I'll just say for me personally, I found them disappointing, and then sort of just go from there, right? Okay, I think I'm going to start with the most disappointing ones because you want to end on a high note, don't you? So we'll start with the bads and then move on to the good. So three most disappointing, starting with number 3. So not the most disappointing, but the third most disappointing. I'm going to go with The Plotters by Eun-Soo Kim. So this one was written in Korean originally, and I have sort of a thing for like Japanese and Korean thrillers that are translated into English. Like I just feel like that's on my level now. Like I've moved beyond English language original thrillers and now I'm into like, you know, Japanese translation and Korean translation thrillers, right? Okay. So because it was a translated one, I sort of felt like it wasn't just going to be an exact replica of all of the thrillers of this type that I've ever read. And that's where I went wrong, okay, originally. So the idea is it's this guy, he's like a hitman, right? But then something goes wrong. One of his hits goes wrong, he does it in the wrong way, and then he becomes the target then for this organization, this like shady organization that he works for as a hitman. He then becomes the target. And I was thinking, okay, so the hitman becomes target trope or whatever, or this sort of theme that goes through some books. Okay, it's a bit of a cliche. I've read some good ones, I've read some bad ones, but because it's translated, maybe it's going to be crazy, maybe it's going to be really good. But then it just turned out to be like really cliche. Like all of the characters and all of the sort of action and everything was really predictable, and I've just, in the end, I've read better hitman becomes target books, and we'll just sort of leave it at that. Like it just sort of let me down in a sort of mild way. Like I gave it 3 stars, meaning, you know, not the worst book I've ever read, was enjoyable, you know, but it let me down. Okay, so the number 2 most disappointing book for the summer reading challenge, I'm gonna go with Supermarket by Bobby Hall. And I think again this was an issue of me having really high hopes about it. Okay, so I need to sit down with myself and talk about how this is ruining books for me. Like I need to lower my expectations going into things, because I think this single-handedly ruins books for me. Like me going in being like, yes, this is going to be amazing, and then it not being good. So the idea about this one is, it's a guy, he's a writer, right? And he's writing about this like guy, this like psycho killer sort of guy or whatever, but he goes too deep. Like he goes too deep inside his character that he's trying to like inhabit in order to write about him and to do a book about him. And then loses himself and loses his mind and like becomes this psycho killer, or like a sort of split personality sort of thing or whatever. But the psycho killer action story ends about halfway and then becomes him in an institution trying to find himself again, you know, which, you know, there are very good books out there about, you know, recovery and trying to find yourself again after an episode. But that's not the book that I thought I was reading, you know. I thought I was reading like a sort of psycho killer slasher type book. So, you know, all of the action ends abruptly, not in a climax, but in sort of like an ending situation. and then like slowly, it just like half of it is just super boring, and it sort of gains itself back at the end, but it wasn't enough to save it. And the character himself, like the main character himself, isn't particularly good. The writing's terrible as well, sort of throwing that in there. Like, this one was just sort of disappointing overall, and I blame myself for thinking that it was going to be amazing, because if I hadn't known that, I'd just gone in thinking it was a mediocre book and then found that it was a mediocre book, it probably would have been fine. I probably would have boosted that up a star. You never know. Okay, so number 1 most disappointing book for the summer reading challenge. I'm gonna go with Do or Die by Suzanne Brockman. And again, I blame myself. I'm looking for a very specific sort of thing always, okay? I'm always on the hunt for this like golden egg thing, right? And when I find it, it's a miracle day, but it's a rarity, okay? It's hard to find. And it is a book that's amazing, like plot, characters, writing, everything. An amazing book on its own without any romance or sex, but which has romance and sex thrown in, okay? So, like say, like I know some people are against me on this, but I stand by my judgment on this. Outlander, okay? Outlander, if you take all the romance and the sex out of that book, still an amazing book. Even if like the main characters were just friends, okay? They die for each other, they fight for each other, they're attached to each other because they're just best effing friends, okay? That would still be an amazing book. Characters are fantastic. Writing is so good, okay? Always keeps you guessing. Loads of historical stuff that's super interesting. But on top of that, you get the extra bonus treasure of there being loads of sex in a book. And it's really good too. It's like good sex scene, like, I don't know why I'm doing this, it's like getting explicit now, but you know what I mean, okay? Like, it has romance and sex in it, and it's good, but it doesn't make the book. Like, you could take it out of the book and it would be good. Okay, I'm always looking for this sort of thing. Like, you know, off topic, if you're in this zone in booktube land and you're hearing me, throw me some recs, okay? Books where the book is super good without the sex, but which also has the sex thrown in, just for an extra bit of fun, okay? Do or Die by Suzanne Brockman was not this book, and I should have known that it wasn't going to be. So the idea is, it's this guy, right? He's like a military, like, sort of mercenary type guy. He's in prison, and the government needs to get him out of prison in order to have him save some children who've been kidnapped. He's the only one who can save them because he's the only one who has previously successfully infiltrated this embassy where they're being kept, right? And like, it's like the, like, Kazbekistan or something. Like, it's 2 countries. It's not Kazakhstan, it's not Uzbekistan. They've like merged it to make a new country, which I'm pretty sure is offensive, and which I think I've mentioned in a vlog before. But other than that, like, the idea is sound, okay? The idea is lots of action. Guy, you know, goes in, saves some kids, you know, has to infiltrate, you know, also takes his sexy lawyer along for the ride. The reason behind why the sexy lawyer has to come is a bit, you know, tenuous, but whatever, you know, you make some allowances for this sort of genre, fine, whatever. But no, just fell flat all the way. Bad writing, terrible cheesy writing, terrible cheesy characters. Like, they're always thirsty. They're always like having real thoughts and then stop and think, oh, but his pecs. Like, why? No, girl. No, girlfriend, you're a lawyer. Have real thoughts, you know? Stop being so thirsty all the time. It's stupid. And like, loads of the plot and everything, loads of it doesn't make any sense. Okay, and I know you have to make allowances, whatever. But when you're doing it all the time, like, why has he done that? That's stupid. Why are we talking about this thing for so long? That's so stupid and doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, this is turning into a really scathing review, and I apologize for that. It's me. It's my fault. I went in with some, like, really high hopes for this book, and whatever. I'll stop talking about it. It's done now. Okay, so now for the 3 best ones of the book challenge, right? So, number 3, I'm going to throw out there a weird one, okay, if you'll allow me. I feel like I'm including this in my top 3 because it's sort of a less obvious favorite in my mind, okay? So there were quite a few on the list for the challenge that I really liked and could be in the top 3. So I've had to sort of like decide, you know, like what my criteria is, blah, blah. I've had to have a think. And I'm going to include this one because I'm still thinking about it. I feel like I need to read it again. It was really interesting and really enjoyable, and I flew through it. It was quite quick. And I still don't know how I feel about it. I enjoyed it, and it's made me think about it literally just at random moments, like brushing my teeth or whatever, throughout this time, ever since. So I'm going to put it as number 3. Okay, and it is Literature by Guillermo, right? So I cottoned on to this one because for the Reading Europe, like readathon thing that I was doing, I had to read one from an author from Spain. So this Guillermo author, he's from Spain. So the book itself takes place in LA. But I feel like it has, you know, like a Spanish feel. If I actually know what that is. Anyway, so the idea for this book is it's in the near future, right? And literature is banned. So you can have books, but you can't have literature, things that make you think, things that are speculative, you know, things that are figurative and sort of experimental. You can only have books that sort of like are like quite boring, or just sort of like bump, 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 like move things forward like this. And the idea behind that is that like cars and trains and things are powered by books now. They're powered by books with a narrative that goes bump, 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 bump. And I guess, you know, thinking about it, wild speculative literature doesn't work in that same way. So it's banned. Again, it's already got you thinking, like, I just think about it all the time, like, what is up with that? Okay, so there's this guy, he's a really shitty journalist, like, he's the main character, right, and he's a bad journalist, and he's got himself deep in some shit, okay, so he falls for this person, blah, blah, ends up as part of the resistance, these people that are working against this ban on literature. And he goes to write a story for his newspaper. He goes into the lair of these people who make the bad books and want to ban all literature. And he says something which gives himself away as a person who thinks figuratively, or a person who thinks in a sort of literary way. And now he's on their radar. And he's got to sort of pull all of his bits together and sort of let everyone know, blah, 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 and sort of tie up his ends before they get him. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it there because I feel like any sort of like further talking about the plot and everything is just gonna give away how I'm still working through what has happened. Like, it just constantly, yeah, there's so many things to think about, and it's so weird, and I feel like potentially I loved it, but I don't know. Okay, so number 2 best book for the project is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. Okay, so loads of people have been talking about this one recently, and for super good reason. So the idea is all of the boroughs of New York, as well as New York City as a whole, have like human avatars. So there's a human resident of each of these boroughs who's like chosen to like become the human representation of each borough, and they're under attack by this like human representation of an alien city, right? So this like crazy alien city is like attacking them, but it's a person, it's like a woman, and she's sort of come to like do them dirty and to like kill them off, but she wants to kill off New York as a whole, like the human personage of New York City as a whole is already sort of weakened by her, right? And she's like coming in for the kill. And that's when these boroughs emerge, these sort of like human representations. Anyway, they're such good representations. Like, I don't know a hell of a lot about New York City, right? I've only been there like a couple times. I don't know loads about the boroughs, but you can tell based on the writing that the people themselves, when the author is talking about the people, she's really talking about the borough. Like, everything that's said as a characteristic of the person also applies to the borough, and you can just tell it. It's like, I'm not sure if the author's from New York as well, but I think it portrays like a real love of the boroughs and a love of New York as well. And they're all quite sort of diverse in, you know, character and identity and everything. Anyway, the 5 of them then, the 5 boroughs, have to sort of band together to fight against this evil alien city. But the evil alien city woman has like pulled one of them to her side and made it so that only 4 of the 5 can ever sort of work together. And I loved it. I thought it was really good. Like, it was like sort of edge of your seat, sort of like what's gonna happen, lots of good action, really good writing as well, and super interesting. Like, I don't think I've ever read anything like that in that sort of storyline before, and I love it. And now it has me thinking about other things, like who would be like the human avatar representation for the city that I live in now. You know, like what would they look like? How would they act? You know, would their background be? Things like that. And same with like the city that I've come from, like my hometown. There's just loads of places that I could go as well. Like, they could also have a sequel. I don't know if there will be a sequel, but you could easily have a sequel to that, and I would read it because it's super interesting. Anyway, loved that one. Okay, number 1 best, like the favorite book that I read for this whole project is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Oh my god. Like, this is definitely like a grocery store book. Okay, I got it at the grocery store. It's a book that is like good for loads of people, you know, like sort of, you'd think like watered down, like that author has loads of books made into movies already and stuff like that, but it wasn't like that. It was so clever. It was so good. So I was originally reading the book, like the big thick like paper hardback book, but then I went home to Seattle for a trip, and I knew that I wasn't gonna be able to take it with me because it was just too heavy and too big, so I had to switch to audiobook. And then just like me in the back of my mom's car, just like, don't talk to me, I'm listening to my audiobook. Like, it took over my whole day, like a good 2 days or whatever, me like not talking to anyone, just like listening to this audiobook, right? Okay, so the idea is this guy, he's a scientist and he's an astronaut, but he doesn't know that because he wakes up from like this deep coma, right? On some sort of like bed, like gurney type thing with this robot just like probing him at all points. And he's like, what the hell? Like, he has no memory. He can't remember anything. How he got there, like he can't remember like this robot or whatever. In the end, as he's sort of slowly getting his memories back, he's sort of fighting against this robot, he's sort of moving about his like spaceship type thing. He slowly remembers things and starts to realize that he's on a mission to save Earth from these like alien microbes which are blocking out the sun. So the alien microbes or whatever, they feed on energy and light, and they've come to the sun, like our sun, in our solar system for some reason, in some way, and they're sort of blocking out light from reaching Earth, and it's over time going to lessen the temperature of Earth to a point where it's uninhabitable, right? But in order to fix the problem, people have to be sent up, and it will take a certain amount of time to get up there, and then a certain amount of time for the information that they glean that will save them to get back. So it's like something like 30-40 years of this uninhabitable landscape where people are starving, and like it's like a dystopia or whatever. And he's on this mission with these 2 other people, but he looks over, those 2 other people are dead now. So it's just him. He's got to save the Earth, right? So good. I think I'm just gonna leave it there. Like, I will just drop this in because some people are super into it and it may like spark you to read it. Alien Contact. I'm just gonna leave it there. Just gonna, you know. Also, if you read The Martian or saw the movie, you know, either one, and the way that the main character in that is like really clever and like really snappy and sarcastic and like funny in his sort of need to like science the shit out of things, you know what I mean? It's a similar sort of guy, you know, he's like a fun, clever, sarcastic sort of guy. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave it there. Read it. So good. Okay, that's the end of the wrap up. Like, again, if you have any questions about like any of like these ones or whatever, you like any thoughts like, oh, how did that one go, blah blah, just drop me a line, I'll let you know. I think my next wrap up, like I've moved on now to a new project, which is Spooky Smart Bitch readathon. It's not going as well, I think, because I've just come back from vacation, like the summer's winding down, I'm feeling lazy. Like, my kid and I have been like binging Stranger Things, like it's a whole situation. And then also next project coming up after that in September is Shorty September, which if you don't know anything about that, please look at my other videos. Like, I'm gonna link that below as well because it's gonna be amazing. Bert is hosting it. He has very graciously asked me to help him host it, and I am loving the crap out of that, so it's going to be amazing. Anyway, other than that, any thoughts, please let me know. Any thoughts about the books I've said. If you also loved the things I loved or hated the things I hated, or, you know, vice versa, opposite opinions, let me know. I'm down, and I will see you next time. Bye, bye, bye.